Um, yeah, I'm interested in this whole theme of moving bike share and shared mobility beyond the urban centers. I don't know if it's something that since I've been involved in transportation, and that's a whole long story. I'm not really specialized in this field, but I just don't see there's been I don't hear a lot of discussion about this. I'm working right now, kind of coordinating with the city and various um, communities in Philadelphia, in the northwest area of Philadelphia, to move bike share or some form of shared mobility beyond the city of Philadelphia. I spoke about this maybe 2 years ago, I think, at the transportation camp, and it's taken various iterations and various forms since then. But just curious now that we're going to be opening back up, just wanting to hear other people's ideas of how that may look. Is that something that, their cities are doing? I know Toronto's doing it, Detroit. Does anybody else have any information about that process and how it looks in other cities and any best practices, etc.? So just going to open it up for comments.
Hey Kathleen, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Hi, David.
My name's David Gerardo. I work for Go Triangle in Central North Carolina. A program that we're trying to launch in coordination with the city of Durham is a microtransit pilot that would kind of expand our current paratransit operations to allow people to anybody, not just disabled people, but anybody in certain regions to travel throughout their respective regions in the city. That would give them access to our current fixed route service. As we see in a lot of different American cities, fixed route can't go everywhere. So a solution that we're trying to come up with is, again, an expansion of our paratransit service that would get people to travel to fixed route, but also to major points of interest that are close to where they live. So I think just from a general design perspective, I think, taking shared mobility to non-urban centers, it would work the best if there's, existing transit there, such as a rail line or a bus line transit, but giving them the flexibility to do so, especially if there isn't pedestrian infrastructure that will allow for biking or that will allow for, for scooters or other modes of transportation that, isn't safe to do so, isn't safe to use. Because in those kinds of areas, the automobile is a dominant mode of transportation. So I think it's important to allow for that flexibility and, get people to, major points of interest and to transit lines.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. Yeah, I mean, one of the things we're obviously dealing with in the areas and the region that I'm representing is a lack of solid infrastructure for, like an expansion of bike share or micromobility. Obviously, scooters are out. Also, we're dealing geographically with some of the highest elevated areas in the city. So like an analog bike would probably not be something that would catch on and would be sustainable. I'm working with a potential vendor. They're called Wheels. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're in California. They're based in California. I had meetings with them there. And they have a lot of VC funding, so they're interested in expansion in Philadelphia. The CEO went to Wharton, so there's connections here. The device that they have is electric, and be dockless. So you could do a geofencing with it and whatnot. So it's a very specialized device. And, they're looking to move into other cities and test it out. So, but, like you said, the infrastructure is one of the biggest obstacles, one of the biggest issues we're facing. And also just, the safety issue. It's like that is something we really want to address first and foremost, plus infrastructure, so that this will be sustainable ultimately. And we're looking at really the kind of pitching it or kind of maybe selling it to city officials and whatnot. I mean, as a like last mile commute kind of option for people. So with all that, I mean, actually it was by the city, it was approved as a pilot. I don't know where that is now. I mean, that's one of the things I'm going to be dealing with once things open up and I can get into conversations with the city. They're not, from what I've heard through the grapevine, they're reluctant to take it on now. I'm sure they've got a lot of other things they're dealing with too, but, given, I think the infrastructure plan is probably at some level going to be passed. And I know, from what I read about Pete Buttigieg, he's very much behind bike share and, bike mobility and micromobility, et cetera. So I just think, it's something that the city really needs to look at. Our bike share, I don't know if anyone from Philly is here, maybe besides the host. Okay. I mean, I don't know. My personal opinion of the bike share program is that it's not that great. In the Indigo bike share. I mean, it's fine. It's adequate. But, I've always said to Aaron Ritz, who's the head of it, I have a membership for bike share in New York City, and I don't have one here just because I can get around a lot more there. And it just doesn't make sense to me. Why would I have it if I can't access it? So at any rate, but thank you for that information, David. That's really helpful.
I think there's a lot of potential to incrementally expand Indigo, or I mean, what you were talking about was interesting too, with a completely different system coming into place, but incrementally expand into more dense areas. Philadelphia, like many cities, the boundaries of the city don't create like a neat line between the denser areas and the less dense areas. There's plenty of adjacent areas like Upper Darby, or even parts of Bala Cynwyd, Lower Merion, and Narberth that are more dense than some areas of the city and might make more sense for expansion. But then you get into issues with like a ton of tiny municipalities in different counties and different situations. So it's complicated in terms of thinking about. I've thought about. I live in Mount Airy, but I work for Montgomery County Planning Commission. So people are always across Montgomery County asking for more bike infrastructure and bike share and other kind of things like that. It's hard to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you work for the Planning Commission for Montgomery County. I know I've been in contact with Chris. Is he your boss? Chris? No. Because one of the things we were looking at... Chris, I forgot his last name. I'm sorry. I haven't talked to him.
No, that's okay. But, we have like 40 planners, but none of them is named Chris. So I don't know who you've been talking to.
No, I'm sorry.
Montgomery County Planning Commission?
It's Lower Merion Township Planning
Commission. Oh, okay. So, yeah. No, I work for the county, not the township.
Yeah, it's part of the county. But at any rate, we were looking at combining Lower Merion Township with this particular this initiative. Because one of the communities we were going to be expanding to is Mount Airy, Mount Airy and Manioc. So there'd be 7 Northwest communities, and include Germantown, Mount Airy, West Oak Lane.
What can I do?
Yeah, I've been working at it for about 2 years now, and with varying degrees of interest and excitement, enthusiasm, and then now right before everything shut down, I was in meetings with our state rep, Pam DeLisio, who was very interested in it too, because I'm working in coordination with a big developer that's developing and has I would say they're more visionaries about development and whatnot. I've worked with a lot of developers, and I wouldn't put them in the same category with many of them, but one of the things that they see a need for was actually bike expansion to their particular development, and then it grew from there. It wasn't just that we're just not going to work on that development. We're going to actually look at this whole section of Philadelphia that has a strong biking culture, and it would really catch on. And not only so much with the elite cyclists, but just people that, not even recreational cyclists, people just want to get from, they don't want to have to drive their car to SEPTA, which is our regional rail here, and have to park it and deal with that. It's just like jump on one of these scooter things, these devices. I mean, I should put the link here, but it's takewheels.com. That's the name. That's the device. That's kind of where I am right now, and I'm just, curious, anybody else has, wants to support it, or if anybody else has any other ideas, knows any other type of similar, initiative that's taken off in another city, a major city in the country. And they're electric too, so these are electric bikes. So
I was just going to share another consideration. It sounds like you're pretty far along in discussions with Wheels, and I'm from San Diego, so actually I've seen these on the street.
Oh, okay.
But haven't used one myself. But another consideration might be whether I've also heard of cargo bikes. I think definitely the electric bike component is important for the less dense areas where your trips are probably a bit longer. And yeah, if there's topology that is challenging for an analog bike, then that makes sense. But yeah, cargo could be something else to think about. For folks wanted to go to the grocery store in their own community, then that could be difficult on a bike, even if it's electric. Just where do you put your goods?
Some of the communities that you're talking about would have a lot. The people I see biking are often biking with kids. That's an interesting thing to factor in. And, Mount Airy and Lower Merion for sure. Manayunk to a lesser extent, but still lots of families there too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right, and I mean, it would be a pilot, obviously. We were just talking, let's try it, for 6 months or whatever. I mean, and one of the things I am really concerned about, obviously, is getting people on these devices and them not knowing specific routes, alternate routes of, getting from one section to another section, Because I know myself, not being a Philadelphian, I came from Chicago. I'm originally from Detroit, so the Midwest. And everything's flat there, and it's just not as old, and and they have a great, Lakeshore Drive has an amazing bike path, so it's fairly easy here. I was constantly jumping off my bike, looking at my GPS. I was amazed how complicated it was. Once you're on a bike, obviously if you're in a car, it's completely different. I mean, you just have a different sense of awareness and direction and whatnot. But, I found all my alternate, less congested routes to get from one area to the next. But I know it can be really challenging, especially if you're not cycle oriented, for people. So that's one of the things that we would really set up first. We don't want people going down Germantown Avenue where their old rail system is still in place and their bike gets, their wheel gets caught. And that's happened to me too. So it's these are the things you learn, especially as an outsider. You just really can see things differently when you come into an area, as opposed to when I talk to Philadelphians, they just take those same routes, but I would avoid them. They're not safe. But there's a lot of things that we're going to be addressing before we roll this out, because I want it to be as safe as possible so that it catches on. And then we could go to a cargo bike. I think that would be great. Maybe some kind of a safe scooter if we get some good lane infrastructure. There's a lot of really neat scooters that have cargo areas or spaces and concepts for people that want them for more getting goods and moving things around. So that's the vision. I'm hoping it's going to happen sooner than later, especially now, with the big push for an infrastructure plan and approval of it, which I'm hoping that will happen. So, okay, thank you.
I just want to add real quick. So, Kathleen, I'm working on something similar here in California, and the California Air Resources Board has a couple of programs in incentive programs, and one of them that they have is called the CMO program, and it's the Clean Mobility Options program that focuses on deploying clean share mobility within disadvantaged communities here in California. And before you're able to apply for funding, you actually have to conduct what's called a Community Transportation Needs Assessment, which is basically like a survey and a spatial analysis to figure out what exactly the needs of the communities are. So I think that'd be a good starting point to not only figure out the landscape, but also understand what people want and empower the community to let you know what they want to see in the community. So. Yeah.
Thank you for that. That's great. If you could put that in the chat, that would be excellent. Any information, I really appreciate it. Priscilla, right? It's Priscilla.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's a final report, so I'll be more than happy to share it for you once we have a final report on these communities that we're working with.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful because I really wanted to work really grassroots. I mean, I'm working with the community leaders, like the executive directors of these development corporations, and, you know, they have a kind of understanding of what the community needs, but I'd like to go further than that and really like have like maybe like little mini town hall kind of things where we're really talking about, because I want people to understand like what it's going to look like, you know, what we're like the idea is like really to help people move around. And some of the areas I know that, I'm sorry, who was I talking to that was from Mount Airy? You know,
Chloe.
So, you know, Mount Airy, Germantown, West Oak Lane, these are areas that, you know, have been historically, I mean, not Mount Airy, but, you know, the transportation is pretty much bus, I mean, mass transit, and, you know, a lot of car congestion. So, but again, we want to address infrastructure, safe infrastructure, some kind of a lane or alternate routes before we roll this out. So I'd like to get an idea and talk to people about it. I don't know. I think it's something that a lot of people don't even think of in these areas, you know, doing. So thank you.
If I could actually add something. So, you know, that West Oak Lane, Mount Airy, that's actually the part of Philadelphia that my family's from and that I'm most familiar with.
Okay, great.
To tell me stories all the time. He would take the 6 trolley, the 23 trolley. He would walk to the Cheltenham and Ogontz. What's now a bus loop used to be a trolley loop. So I see a lot of potential, especially along Cheltenham Avenue, for a potential bike share. But similar to what you were saying earlier, it's all pending on infrastructure. Because, you know, Cheltenham Avenue, Ogontz Avenue, those are very car-heavy streets, you know, with bus service, obviously, but it's not necessarily super pedestrian safe. I feel like there's a lot of areas around Philadelphia that are like that. But I think, you know, looking at, because that's a very densely populated area, Philadelphia. So I think that there's potential for a bike share that could be like centered around, you know, either Cheltenham Mall or centered around Cheltenham and Ogontz Loop. That could be, or Cedarbrook, that has potential for a bike share program where people are using their bikes to, you know, get to, you know, those retail centers or between the retail centers and their homes, or maybe they're using it to get to a bus. They can, you know, obviously put the bike on the bus and then take it off and the bikes wherever they need to go, wherever the destination is. So I think that there is potential there for potential bike share, maybe not for expanded paratransit. But now I'm glad you clarified those parts of Philadelphia, because I actually never heard somebody refer to those parts of Philadelphia as Northwest Philadelphia. I just every time I hear somebody say, "Oh, Mount Airy" or Germantown, I just know where they are. I just never thought about it as Northwest Philadelphia. But
Sure.
I think that there's potential for those kinds of modes there.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, so I was actually I worked in East Falls, and that's how I kind of fell into this, and you know, that's kind of like the gateway to the Northwest. Northwest, you know, obviously, like I said, I'm not from Philly, and I always hear Philadelphians refer to South Philly, North Philly, ugh. So I kind of, going with what people call Northwest. So it would be these 7 communities, like I was saying. Like, anyhow, I don't need to get into the weeds here about but they're the 7 communities, and West Oak Lane and Germantown and Mount Airy also would be included in those too. And you know, and Roxborough, and there's a lot. It's amazing how much support. I think, you know, it's like anything. I mean, there's the city proper, but yet it feels like not integrated to the city. And like a lot of that is like, you know, because of transportation and just like not having that connection. So, but even getting to know the communities. I mean, the idea too would be connecting these communities as well through something, not just by car or by bus, but, you know, being able to buzz around from one section of the, you know, like Roxborough to East Falls, maybe. I mean, instead of having to do that by bus, or, you know, you could even East Falls all the way to West Oak Lane. You know, I mean, and obviously a lot of these areas have universities too. I mean, and we're trying to really tap into the need for transportation by students, faculty, you know, in the community in general. So.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you brought up East Falls. I think East Falls is a great spot, except it's, like you said before, it's super elevated. So it'll be really hard to have bikes there. But I'm thinking like any like communities that are in between the R6, R7, R8, or the Norristown, Chestnut Hill East, Chestnut Hill West lines are great spots to have some kind of bike share. I think those neighborhoods are they're just really good for that kind of transportation. It's just not there. I think it will receive a lot of support. I think those are really good spots.
Yeah, I mean, right. And I think from what I understand, again, like I know the city's not at this point interested. I mean, I heard through the grapevine they won't be looking at it for another 10 years. So I'm not going to wait 10 years. But so, yeah, I need to find somebody to really help me push this forward in the front so that I can, get it rolled out. I mean, and I'll be on. I mean, the other issue we're having is it's a legislative one too. These bikes or these devices don't have operable pedals, so they're not considered analog bikes, or they're not considered bikes per se. So, so PennDOT has very strict, codes or whatnot around, bikes that or devices that don't have operable pedals, because they're considered like a scooter type thing, or then you'd have to be registered or licensed, and et cetera. So I know Wheels has their own lobbyist that's been working on that. I don't know how far they are with that. I've been doing more of the grassroots kind of coalition building, but I have talked to him on and off. I don't know where he is now. I mean, I know that the city council and Harrisburg as well was not really looking at anything like this during COVID. I mean, everything was COVID related. So we're going to get back into, having to see exactly how we can roll this out without having to go down the legislative kind of rabbit hole. But I don't know. There's some people throwing around some options, memos of understanding between the communities and the city, maybe just for a pilot, et cetera. So anyways, I don't want to get into all those details, but those are some of the challenges we're facing too, besides just, coordinating it all with these communities in the city.
Can you hear me okay? Sometimes my mic. Okay. So I'm actually from Maryland. I'm from a rural part of Maryland. It's right on the other side of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. I would argue that it's more suburban, but we describe ourselves as rural. But so one of the issues that I've been running into when talking about like bike infrastructure with people in my county, including my neighbors, but also when I talk to the planning department or my county commissioners, is I say we need safe bike lanes to get places, because I see people biking. I drive in my car and I drive past people biking, so clearly there is a need. And they say, well, but we have the bike trail, but I think that's been a really frustrating thing to run into, because the bike trail is recreational. You can tell because it's maintained by the Parks Department, and it doesn't have any signage, and it doesn't connect to anything. And so it's just fundamentally not true. And some of those things can be fixed really easily, just with signs. There are already little off exits where, maybe one day they'll put in anything to connect it. But I think actually some kind of shared mobility, like a bike share program, could work great there, because it connects a couple, the things it does connect are very touristy. And so I've written down a ton of notes just from this, 20 minutes of conversation. Because I think that could be great, having docks at, we have the seafood restaurants and the parks and the library. And I think that could be an approach, at least that I take, is the tourist. This is to get people to spend money here, because it's been hard to convince people in the county that not everyone has a car. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that this has been great.
Great.
I think there.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's probably someone who actually collects data on this, but I know that there are people who go, to Center City, Philadelphia to ride Indigo bikes around, maybe take the train in or take their car in even and like do the bike share thing as a tourist. I saw a presentation from someone at Indigo that showed this because the route that goes right from the art museum, Philadelphia Museum of Art, like a huge tourist attraction and landmark, was actually their busiest rental dock location. So they're pretty sure that a lot of those are visitors, which is great, but I think there's evidence that it can draw tourism to an area, and why not do both? Help the people that live there have more options to get around, as well as draw in tourists. Like if you have a good system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I've heard that I think I saw that presentation. I've heard people make that comment too. But and I've seen bikes, and just getting to Jenna's point too, on our the Schuylkill River Trail, and then it connects to Forbidden Drive, which is like a recreational biked path and trail, and obviously used by commuters as well. But I've seen those Indigo bikes as far as Valley Green, roads, crazy.
Right.
But obviously they know that they're going to be charged a lot because they can't redock them anywhere close by. They got to bike them all the way back into the city, So, and I know I've heard Aaron talk about that circular movement around like the Barnes Foundation and then the Museum of Art. But yeah, my argument too is like what Jenna was saying, is that we have these thriving commercial main streets and commercial areas in a lot of these communities that I'm representing in the Northwest, and we want to bring people into this area, like tourists, and beyond, and have people, like I've talked to people that live in West Philly, and they're like, I mentioned Glenside, I mentioned all these other communities, it's like Philly's a city of neighborhoods, and they're like, that seems like, New York to them. I would never go out there. I'm like, why would I? Well, there's a lot to see out there. There's a lot to do. You'd be surprised, and a lot of thriving communities. So, we're really trying to that's another approach that we're trying to, connect the city to these communities in a real way, not just like I have to go out there to run an errand, but, because you could do it recreationally or something and have it as a destination.
Right. If there's no integration at all between Indigo and this other system, I think that could be a challenge, as you cited, for people with an Indigo bike trying to ride all the way out to Valley Green. But same the other way, you might want to hop on a bike share and ride in towards the city. It seems like it would be better if there's some way to integrate the systems. It might not really be possible.
Yeah, I know. There's a big presentation coming up too, not in this forum, but in the shared use mobility conference, talking about integrating systems that dockless and e-bike to an analog shared bike system, which I'm going to be participating in because I really definitely need to understand that better and how that will look and how it will work. But, initially we may just hopefully just roll this out more as like I said, the last mile commute to get people just to try it out, just so that they don't have to be jumping in their car just to get to the rail system or the rail stations and stuff. But ultimately they'll be using it for more than that. And they're dockless and they're electric. So, they're not going to even look like an analog. They're if you get on that website, you can see they're kind of funky looking. They look more like a scooter, look like a small version of a mini version of a scooter or something. So, and they have a helmet. You could put, there's a helmet that has like a, what do you call it? It's a hygienic shield.
Disposable liner.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. But they thought of everything,
That's great.
Yeah, so that would be the idea.
Cool.
Kathleen, has there been support from like Chestnut Hill College or Philadelphia University about okay, that I would figure universities and colleges would love this idea.
Yeah, they're 100% on board. I went to them first, because I knew they could see the need, far and beyond a lot of other, people that are more worried about the safety issue and whatnot, which is, like I said, I'm a avid cyclist, so I am always concerned about safety, and like I always take the less transited routes as much as I can. I mean, I bike all over, and I jump on bike share wherever I go. So, yeah, but we definitely targeted Philly U, which is now Jefferson U, and East Falls. Yeah, I know you haven't, David. A lot's changed since you've been gone. Yeah, and they're really into it because Jefferson has a lot of people commuting into East Falls, where now they're new big, they've taken over Philadelphia U, which is in East Falls. So they need people. I mean, people are complaining, like, I don't want to have to walk up that big hill. I don't want to take an Uber to get to the center, the university center in East Falls. So they see that as just like, a no-brainer. We need it for that minimally, and then we would want to put some of the bikes there too. To help people just commute from the train station to the university. And also Chestnut Hill College has the same desire. They want to be more linked to the main street of Chestnut Hill, and they want their students to go there. And they don't want their students bringing cars to the college. They don't want them to rely on it. So and I was also, getting back to Jenna's question and issue about safe bike lanes that are not just recreational. I mean, when I was in Montreal, I just noticed that just putting up, and I know they have them in Philadelphia now too on Pine Street, just those, and I'm not really sure of the nomenclature of these things, but those, they're not the barrier, those plastic, what are they called? Like little poles that go along a road. You know what I'm talking about? A lot of times people hit them. I mean, just that kind of psychological barrier, I think, could just be a first step, and because you do feel a little more, they have them in New York City too. It does help. And I think
flexible bollards.
Bollards.
They're called flexible bollards. But just one quick thing, so I'm going to have to hop off in a second, is that dvrpc has been doing bike lane pilots around a couple different locations. They actually did one in Narberth. It was only for a few weeks.
Okay.
But they've been interested in putting up pilots, and I'm working with them on one in Hatboro. On Main Street, where they're going to install temporary flexible bollards and some temporary striping to sort of try out a bike lane.
Oh, great.
Get a little feedback from the community and sort of just broaden the conversation around bicycle mobility. So you might want to talk to them. And I'm now the planner for Narberth, which is surrounded on all sides by Lower Merion Township. So if you want to, they just did the bike lane pilots. I think they might be interested in being your 8th community if you
okay, great. Yeah, and you got to advocate for Mount Airy too, Chloe.
Sounds good. Mount Airy all the way. Okay. The coordinator of, what's her title? Bicycle. I don't know. You guys actually from Philly? Jeanette Brucker, the coordinator of bicycle planning in the mayor's office. What is that called now? Otis. The Office of Transportation and Infrastructure. She lives in West Mount Airy. She bikes everywhere with her family, so.
Okay.
She lives in my block. I'll book her about that.
Okay, thank you.
If she's even heard of it. Sure.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say, going back to the university college comment, I think universities are such good resources for advocating for transit. I live literally smashed between 3, Duke, UNC, and NC State. And a lot of what we do in terms of transit at Go Triangle, it caters towards, those universities because they're really, really big universities. So I think, having their influence can really push for, good transit-related causes, which is why I asked about Philly U and Chestnut Hill in the first place. They really changed the name to Thomas Jefferson University?
Jefferson, yeah. I think it's like an amalgamation right now. It's like Philly U, Jefferson, something like that. But yeah, ultimately everybody's concern is going to, override the Philly U part and they'll eventually just be Jefferson. Yeah. I know there was a lot of backlash about it.
First they take over Market East, now they're taking over Philly U.
Mm-hmm. They really have taken over so much. It's amazing. Yeah. Okay, that's good. I will definitely, I keep those guys, really close, my contacts at the universities, even St. Joe's, because we're looking at, there's that St. Joe's is on both the Philadelphia County and Montgomery County side. So they're interested as well because those, their student population is not well connected to the city and other communities. That whole area, that artery, City Ave, is just so hard to navigate and get in and out of. And so, and we're looking at obviously a lane infrastructure, some kind of alternate routes for bikes as well in that area.
Yeah, I'll also add that, I'm a biker. I ride in Philly, and I personally think that universities and colleges can really instill the culture of people liking to ride their bikes places, because I know I personally never would have ever thought to get on a bike and ride around the city until I met friends in university who did the same. So I definitely think being in contact with colleges and universities as much as possible is absolutely key.
Right. No, you're right. I know my daughter's at Penn now, and she's seen myself and my husband biking all forever, and she's like, I'm not going to do that. It's your thing. And now all her friends bike, and she couldn't wait to get a bike, which are hard to come by now with COVID. But we found one on Craigslist for her, and she's loving it. I mean, it's so true. It's like it just starts there. Your love for cycling, because you see how much easier it is to get around, much faster. More convenient, as long as you're safe. Shannon, I hope you're being safe out there because it's crazy biking around Philadelphia. So
absolutely, yeah.
Have you had similar conversations with, say some like the further out suburbs, say like Radnor or Paoli maybe, about possible shared mobility in those spaces?
I haven't yet, no. I mean, no. Because we were really looking towards, it was more city-centric, kind of the approach. Okay. We were looking to connect to Philadelphia. And since I don't really have any contact, although Chloe was saying that Narberth is now, did the lane pilot. But yeah, I know. I would love to, eventually, since we're working with Lower Merion Township, the idea would be to move in that direction too, and I'd let them do it. Once we would pilot it in Lower Merion Township, which is kind of right on the border of Philly, and then I thought, it'd be great. We have a lot of visibility there too, and people were like, why don't we have those, here? So I mean, that's kind of what happens. People are like, wait, I saw those buzzing around. When are they going to come to my community? So yeah, that would be the idea, and then with the hopes of it would just spread. And it might, and I think from what I understand, Montgomery County is a lot more agile than Philadelphia County, and they probably might be able to do it a little quicker in some ways. I don't know. That's what I've heard. So, but
yes and no. Just the caveat is that there are 62 separate municipalities that each have their own set of elected officials and their own local planning commissions within Montgomery County. Like I'd say us at the county planning commission, pretty receptive to ideas and happy to support things, but if you're going to go into a community, you have to talk to each one individually.
Right.
It can be a little bit of a headache, but so that can vary community by community.
Right, and that's why I was working initially with the community leaders, because you really need their buy-in.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Right. Mm-hmm. No, working directly with Lower Merion makes sense in this case.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, any other ideas, any other observations? Anybody else is following any other model like this? In the country? I mean, I think Detroit's doing a great job with, I talked to the woman who was in charge of their bike share program. I had a meeting with her when I was in Detroit. They're moving out into the bedroom communities like Ferndale, Royal Oak. And, they have great infrastructure because it was the car industry built all these great boulevards and avenues. And a lot of people aren't living there anymore. So they've freed them up when they have all these great bike lanes. We biked when I was there. It was pretty amazing what you can do in Detroit. And obviously it's flat too. So, and it's connected like more in a grid easier than Philly. But yeah, she's having enormous success and with that.
Well, my last 2 cents before I hop off, it sounds like you had a very deep connection with the community, and you can definitely leverage that to your advantage. The needs assessment can basically help you not only guide the investments that Wheels has, but also identify the gaps that are within the communities, whether it be your urban communities or your suburban. And yeah, just the partnership sounds good. So great to talk with you all. I'm going to hop off.
Okay,
Bye.
great. Thank you.
I'm glad I heard about this idea. I'll look you up on LinkedIn, Kathleen.
Oh, okay, thank you.
We'll probably stay in touch.
Yeah.
I'm glad to have this conversation.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. I don't know if you want to end early, that's fine. I don't know how this works, but thank you, everybody, for your comments.
Thanks for having discussion.
Okay, thanks.